Braden Huff had a game-high 19 points off the bench against Yale in one of the most impressive debuts in Gonzaga basketball history. We're going to discuss what that means for Mark Few's lineup on today's Locked On Zags podcast.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by Gametime. Folks, download the Gametime app, create an account, and use that promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Happy Mailbag Monday. Happy Gonzaga basketball season, folks. This is the first episode we're doing after an actual men's basketball game here as the Zags defeat Yale over the weekend. We're going to talk about that. For those of you who are new to the show, new to Locked On, new to Mailbag, whatever it may be, just to get you an idea of how it works, you can ask me mailbag questions in multiple different ways. You can email me, andypatton013@gmail.com. Typically, I will post something on Twitter as well, andypattoncbb. You can also join our Discord channel. It is completely free. There is a link in the show notes. We have game threads. We're talking Gonzaga basketball 24/7, close to 250 people in there right now. That is the easiest, quickest, fastest way to get your questions asked and answered as well. We got a bunch of questions today, so we're just going to get straight into them. Strike Nowhere on Discord, Jeff via Gmail, and Austin via Discord all asked a variety of the same question, effectively, whether Braden Huff's playing time is going to change. Is he going to play over Ben Gregg? What does Braden Huff's performance on Friday mean for the team's depth chart? So we're going to start there. For those of you who missed Friday's game or who just want to be reminded of what happened, the Zags defeating the Yale Bulldogs, a very quality program. Braden Huff came off the bench, 19 points, 7 of 10 shooting, 9 rebounds, and he looked fantastic. And when Braden Huff looked good in the craziness in the kennel, we thought, hey, this is great. He looks like he might be somebody who could sneak into the rotation. And then when Braden Huff looked good against Lewis and Clark State in the exhibition game, it was, hey, okay, maybe he's not only in the rotation, but maybe there's a little bit more to it, but we still want to see it against real competition. So far, we've seen him play his teammates. We've seen him play a D3 school. Now we've seen him do it against legitimate competition. And this is legitimate competition. This is not the typical first game for Gonzaga. Oftentimes the first team Gonzaga plays is some sub 300 KenPom team. Yale's a top 75 team at KenPom. They would probably finish third in the WCC. And for Braden Huff to go out and nearly put up a double-double, go 19-9, is phenomenal. What it means for his playing time, it's hard to say. Braden played 20 minutes in this game. Ben Gregg played 16. My preseason projections had both those guys, the most recent projections, both those guys playing similar minutes off the bench. And I'm sticking with that. I don't think that this game necessarily means Braden's going to play way more than Ben Gregg. I wouldn't be surprised if he plays more than Ben Gregg in totality at the end of the season. He certainly looks like a player who could. Ben and Braden's skill sets kind of overlap in a lot of ways. And Braden looked, he's a good outside shooter. He's a bigger player. He's more of a rim protector than Ben is. I don't know that he's great in that area yet. We just haven't seen it enough. But the skill sets overlap enough that if Braden continues to outplay Ben, he's probably going to continue to get more playing time. I think it's going to be close. Gonzaga doesn't have the luxury of not playing both these guys a lot of minutes. They just don't have it, especially if we're going to see more three big lineups, which we'll talk about momentarily. But to me, this solidified that Braden Huff is obviously a part of the rotation, a very big part of the rotation. And, you know, this probably won't be the first time he leads or the last time he leads this team in scoring. An absolutely phenomenal performance from him, lived up to the hype we've been having the last couple of weeks. Extraordinarily excited to see what he can continue to do in a Gonzaga uniform. Sticking with the Braden Huff train, this question also comes from Jeff via Gmail, who says, Braden Huff had a fantastic first ever college basketball game. Clearly not as good as Jalen Suggs' 27.9 rebound game against number 6 Kansas. Beyond the Suggs performance, have you seen a better first game performance than what Huff did against Yale? Yeah, 19-9 again on 7-10 shooting. Excellent. Did it against a top 75 team at KenPom. Really tough to beat that, but there are some performances out there. Let's not forget Chet Holmgren's first ever college game. 14 points, 13 rebounds, 7 blocks, and 6 assists. He did that on 6 shot attempts. 14 points on 4 of 6 shooting. Again, 13 rebounds, 7 blocks, and 6 assists. Now, this came against Utah Tech, formerly known as Dixie State. They finished the season 328th in KenPom. So Huff had more points against a better basketball team. But it is really hard to ignore the overall impact that Chet Holmgren had in his first game. A few others that of note, Shem Karnowski had 22 points and 3 rebounds in 20 minutes in his first game. That was against Southern Utah, who finished outside the top 300. In KenPom, Domantas Sabonis had 14 and 8 with 2 assists in 20 minutes against Sacramento State, who was a top 200 team. All good performances. Chet and Braden, they're really tough to compare. I think I probably lean Chet in terms of a more dominant overall game. But again, there's a huge discrepancy in the quality of the opponent that those two played. Next question here comes from Christian via Gmail. Christian says, I really thought the Watson, Huff, Gregg lineup worked well. The announcers commented on the matchup problems these lineups could present. Watson, EK, Gregg, and Huff present very different matchup challenges. What are your thoughts on how this might work? I don't think we're going to see this all as often. And I don't want to pour kind of cold water on this. I know a lot of people are very excited about it. We're very happy that we did see it in this game. I just don't think it's going to happen much. I think part of it happened in part because of some early foul trouble for Dusty Stromer. I also think that, Seal Venter's injury happened just a few days before the start of the season for Gonzaga, and I think they were kind of scrambling a little bit. I think ultimately Luka Krajinovic might sneak into the rotation more. Perhaps Jun Sakio, he did not look great on Friday. There's no, that's just a fact. He didn't, but I think he will get more comfortable as the year goes on. But the 3 big lineup gave up 8 points to Yale, immediately. In the first 3 possessions, Yale hit 2 threes and a bucket. The defense on that lineup is going to be a challenge, in particular the perimeter defense. It's one of the things that Gonzaga fans and Gonzaga in general have really struggled with. How is this team going to defend 3? It's a question I've been getting a ton coming into the season. Is Gonzaga going to be better at defending the 3? And yet people really want this 3 big lineup that I think is going to be pretty terrible at defending the 3-point line. I think that's going to be a big issue for them. So yes, offensively, they create matchup issues for opposing teams, but this team also can't get out in transition as much. We didn't see them push the pace all that much when they had the 3 big lineup in. Ryan Nembhard wants to push the pace. Nolan Hickman wants to push the pace. That's what those 2 guys are very good at. And so I think the 3 big lineup, while it does present some half-court matchup issues offensively, I think it's a bit limited defensively. I think asking Anton Watson to defend the perimeter for 30 minutes a game is just not super reasonable, super realistic. I think the team would struggle to defend the perimeter, wouldn't be able to get out in transition. In short spurts, I think it's great. And I think we will see it in short spurts, but I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see it for lengthy periods of time, especially as we get further into the season and guys like Krajinovic and Yo get more comfortable with playing time. Next question comes from Pete_22909 on Discord, who says, Ryan Nembhard played a full 40 minutes in the Baylor scrimmage and 40 minutes again against Yale. Do you expect Ryan to be playing the entire game against future Gonzaga opponents? Not every game, no. Not every game, no. He's not going to play every minute of Gonzaga basketball's upcoming season, but he's going to play a lot. The Baylor scrimmage, the minutes per game in that don't matter to me. There was an extra scrimmage that happened, 20 extra minutes where some of the younger guys got to play. I don't think that Ryan, a lot of people, even respected people in the industry, have made a big deal about Ryan Nembhard playing 40 minutes against Baylor in a scrimmage. I just don't think that matters all that much. I'm not taking that super seriously, but yeah, he played all 40 minutes against Yale, and that certainly doesn't mean nothing. But I think we'll see Krajinovic sneak into the rotation more. I think we might see, if we see more of the 3 big lineups, we might see that with Dusty at the 2 potentially, which creates some opportunities for Hickman to play the 1, for Nembhard to come off the bench, or to be on the bench. I think against good teams, against Purdue, against UConn, against San Diego State, yeah, Ryan Nembhard might play a full 40. He's not going to play a full 40 on Tuesday. I almost guarantee you that. If he does, I'm going to be a little annoyed at Mark Few. We're going to have words about that if Ryan Nembhard plays 40 minutes against Eastern Oregon, a team that Gonzaga beat by 78 points last year. Final question of the first segment comes from Austin via Discord. Austin says, Luka and Yo both made an appearance in the first half, but not in the second. Do you think we'll see more of them earlier, or could this have been a result of fouls in the first half? Yeah, I think the only reason these guys played in the first half was because Dusty got in some foul trouble. Granted, as a freshman who is aggressive defensively, Dusty's going to get in foul trouble. This is the thing that's going to happen. I like Dusty. I like what he brought defensively. We'll talk more about that. I thought he was very, very good in this game, but he's going to get in foul trouble. It is absolutely assuredly something that is going to continue to happen, particularly early in his Gonzaga basketball career as he adjusts to Division I referees, as he adjusts to just playing at this level. So I do think we might see more of those guys in the first half to alleviate some of the depth issues if Dusty gets in foul trouble. But I think that's kind of the only reason they played in the first half. And in situations where they don't need those guys to play, we probably won't see much of them. I think we'll see more of them as the year goes on. But right now, with Steele's injury happening so quickly before the season started, I think there was a lot of just kind of scrambling to figure out how to make it work. And as the year goes on and on, we'll see the lineup kind of shift in a different way. And I don't think we'll see a ton of those guys in the first half. Well, discussion on Gonzaga's very solid team defense and some of the added confidence we saw from Nolan Hickman is all coming up. But first, I want to tell you how to secure some last-minute tickets for some phenomenal games using Gametime. College basketball season is here, folks, and you're going to need last-minute tickets to some incredible sporting action. And I know Gametime is going to have the tickets that I need at a good price, and I'm going to be able to see what the view looks like from my seat right in the app. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for any event that you're looking for, whether it's a college basketball game or football or baseball or music or comedy or theater, you name it, they've got it. And in addition to the view from the seat feature, I also really like that Gametime has the lowest price guarantee and event cancellation protection. That makes me feel really comfortable to just go ahead and buy those tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. And now if you download the Gametime app and create an account, you can use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, folks, let's get right back into it here. Locked On Zags. I want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. We got tons of fantastic questions here on Mailbag Monday. I want to make sure we get through all of them. This next one here comes from Christian via Gmail. Christian says, the D seemed really good against a team that would probably finish third in the WCC in Yale. What were some of the defensive positive takeaways from this game? Stromer is very active. Huff is a plus defender, etc. Yeah, the activity of Gonzaga's defense was fantastic. Play in the passing lanes. It kind of felt like everybody was sort of learning from Anton Watson. Watson, who's phenomenal at using his hands, playing the passing lanes, being disruptive, knocking the ball loose, getting takeaways, that kind of stuff. And I feel like we have a roster more built with players who like to do that kind of stuff. And I think it worked to really disrupt Yale in a lot of ways. I think we're going to see Gonzaga have some good defensive games and some not so good defensive games. I do not think that this team is an elite defensive team yet. Maybe they will get there. I still have concerns. Rim protection is still an area of need. I know people are very excited about Braden Huff and the rim protection that he brings, but we haven't seen him play. Yale's starting big man averaged like 2 points per game last year. He's not much of a threat for that team. Certainly Purdue will be a different animal, but I don't think we should judge, just like I don't think we should judge Braden Huff based on how he played against a career backup center at Yale. We also shouldn't entirely judge him if Zach Edey goes out and gets 28 points, which is very possible because it's Zach freaking Edey and he's really good. But I do think Gonzaga is going to struggle with rim protection. It's worth acknowledging Yale shot 38% from three in this game. Like Gonzaga's perimeter defense wasn't excellent. They got a lot of takeaways. I think they frustrated Yale with some of the things they did. I think the three-quarter court press, the half-court traps were phenomenal. And I think Gonzaga is going to be able to run that stuff with Stromer, with Anton, with some of the pieces that they have on this roster. But the outside, the perimeter defense and the rim protection are still areas that I don't feel that great about where Gonzaga's at, and I'm still a little apprehensive that particularly really good teams that Gonzaga plays in the non-conference, a couple times in conference, and of course in the NCAA tournament, they're going to be able to exploit some things against Gonzaga defensively. Next question here comes from Austin via Discord. Austin says, after seeing 2 games, is it too soon to say that Hickman looks a lot more comfortable at the 2? Yes and no. I think the main reason I would say no is because Hickman looked comfortable off the ball for an entire season as a freshman. And I say an entire season. Hickman fell off really considerably at the end of his freshman year. So for like 2/3 of his freshman season, Nolan Hickman looked comfortable in an off-ball role. We saw some of that same stuff from him on Friday. You can get him the ball when Nembhard has to give up the basketball because there's pressure on him. Hickman can create. We saw him get out and transition really well, attack the basket, score around the rim. These were things he did really well as a freshman. A reminder, Hickman shot like 60% on 2-pointers as a freshman and was like 48% last year on 2-pointers. I think being in a secondary role allows him to get more transition buckets. It allows him to attack the basket in a different way than he has to do in the pick and roll as the primary guard. And I think we're going to see Hickman be a more efficient scorer. And I think he's going to get more confident. He looked more confident in this game than he did last year. I don't think that it's unreasonable to make that projection at this point after a couple of games. He's still going to have his ups and downs, certainly. But I think that the hope that we've had all offseason is that Hickman adjusting to an off-ball role was going to allow him to be more confident, more creative, and all that stuff. So far, so good. I guess that's the best thing we can say at this point. Next question here comes from Pete, 22909 on Discord. Second question of the show for Pete, who says, Ryan Nembhard's speed, quickness, and ability to drive effectively both left and right reminds me a lot of UNC's great guard RJ Davis. Do you see the similarity? He brings a set of skills to the team that are different from what Andrew provided. Well, first thing that comes to mind is RJ Davis is not nearly the passer and the facilitator that Ryan Nembhard is. RJ Davis is in his senior season, he's a career average of exactly 3 assists per game. His career high in assists per game is 3.6. Ryan Nembhard's career low in assists per game is 4.4. 4.4 as a freshman, 4.8 as a sophomore. We'll see what he puts up this year. So far, so good, 7 assists per game because he had 7 in that game against Yale. So that's a huge difference between the two of them. I understand the rest of the comps, just a talented guard who can go both directions. I'm also not sure what set of skills Ryan's bringing that Andrew didn't bring. And I'm not saying that as a knock on Ryan, more of a, what do we think Andrew didn't bring? Like Ryan brings transition offense. He brings the ability to pass the ball ahead, to get out in transition, score buckets that way, facilitate the offense in the pick and roll, step back and hit 3-point shots. Andrew brought all of that. I don't know that there's a lot Ryan's bringing. He's a different player. They're not exactly the same, but there's not a lot Ryan's bringing that I think Andrew didn't bring. And I think that that's a good thing because Andrew was phenomenal. And I think Ryan being able to bring more or less the same stuff as Andrew is something we should consider a good thing. And trying to find differences between their two games doesn't really matter to me. I think that if Ryan were exactly the same as Andrew, I don't think that would be a bad thing at all. They're not, to be clear, but I don't see these huge differences that Ryan's bringing that Andrew's not. They have almost the exact same 3-point percentage in their careers, similar assists numbers. What I saw from Ryan in this game looked a lot like what I would have expected to see from Andrew. Next question comes from Shelly Rito 7 on Discord, who says, with Marcus Adams committing to Gonzaga and then leaving due to possible academic eligibility, is that a possibility why Gonzaga doesn't go after more 5-star recruits or recruiting in general? Couple things to point out here. One, we do not know that Marcus Adams left because of academic ineligibility, and I think it's a little bit disingenuous to indicate that. If that comes out, fine. But I don't think Marcus Adams Jr. left Gonzaga because of academic eligibility, I think is the key here. Marcus Adams Jr. graduated high school early. He made the decision to graduate in 3 years because Kansas accepted the amount of credits that he had in high school and was admitting him to their university. Gonzaga probably wasn't able to make that work. That does not mean that Marcus Adams Jr. was ineligible. It doesn't imply that I don't know. It feels like the implication here is that 5-star students aren't smart enough to be in college. And I know that that's probably not exactly what's trying to be communicated here, but that's not the case here. Marcus Adams Jr. wanted to go to Kansas, changed his mind about wanting to go to Kansas. Academics at that point were tricky, and because of the timing. He is ineligible to play at BYU this year because he entered the transfer portal and has to sit out a year. That's it. That's the reasoning. The academics aren't necessarily a factor there. Beyond that, Gonzaga does recruit 5-stars. Like, I'm not sure I understand the question entirely. Is that why Gonzaga doesn't go after more 5-star recruits? They go after a ton of 5-star recruits. They go after multiple 5-star recruits every single year. They don't land a ton of them. Mark Few's very picky, but that has been the case since he's been a recruiter in the 90s. Mark Few's always been picky. If he doesn't like a 5-star player's fit, if he doesn't like their attitude, he's not going to just go after 5-stars to go after 5-stars. He's never, ever, ever done that. And he's not going to ever do that again. So I guess the short answer to the question is this is a weird, unique situation, the Marcus Adams Jr., and to think that it has anything to do with Gonzaga's past recruiting or future recruiting it doesn't. It has nothing to do with how Gonzaga is going to recruit or how Gonzaga has recruited. It was just a weird situation that ultimately didn't end up with Adams Jr. in Spokane. Final question of the segment comes from Jeff via Gmail. Jeff says, the last 2 times Gonzaga started the season outside the top 10 were 2015-16 and 2016-17, and each worked out very differently. Which one of those teams does this year's team more closely look like? Well, to be clear, the 15-16 team was an 11 seed who barely snuck into the NCAA tournament and then went on a nice run to the Sweet 16. The 16-17 team did not lose until BYU on senior night and then did not lose again until the national championship. The odds are pretty high that this Gonzaga team is going to be somewhere in the middle, that they are going to lose games in the regular season but get higher than an 11 seed. So if we're talking just overall results, it's going to be somewhere in the middle. If we're talking what the team looks like, they more resemble the 16-17 team. The 16-17 team had 2 starting experienced guards in Nigel Williams-Goss and Josh Perkins. Of course, this year has Ryan Nembhard and Nolan Hickman. They had 4 quality bigs who all played a significant role in the rotation in Shem, Jonathan Williams, Zach Collins, and Killian Tilly. This year, of course, has Graham Ike, Anton Watson, Ben Gregg, and Braden Huff. So the similarities in this roster are more similar to 16-17. I don't think they're going to go undefeated until senior night. Sorry, I would be great if they did. I just don't think that that's the super likelihood. But I think in terms of roster construction, they more similarly resemble that team from 16-17. We're going to close out today's show with talk on a few Zags in the NBA. We're going to talk about the women's narrow loss to Washington State, what that means for them. But before we get to that, I want to tell you about today's sponsor, Jase Medical. And folks, we spend a lot of time talking together. We get fired up together about wins. We sometimes talk about losses. We don't have to do it all that often here on the Locked On Zags podcast. We talk about who's starting, who's sitting, all that good stuff. And I'm thankful for that connection that we have. And today I want our chat to be a little bit more personal. Whether you're on an extended travel or you're bracing for a major weather event or limited by a supply chain shortage, you are covered. Thanks to our partners at Jase Medical, life-saving antibiotics and a long list of daily medications can be ordered in a 1-year supply. Even ED generics like Cialis and Viagra prescriptions. Go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jase. I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half in order to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply. I also ordered an antibiotic kit. I feel secure now. Prices are lower than local pharmacies. I highly recommend this for everyone. So if you or someone you know would love to get a peace of mind by having a year's supply of their daily medication, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. And remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. All right, folks, closing out the show today with more mailbag questions. This next one comes from Jeff via Gmail. Jeff says, with the early season tournament starting later this week and running through the Saturday after Thanksgiving, what do you like the most about the 9 days of college basketball's feast week? Have you seen a better early season tournament than this year's Maui tournament field that includes 6 top 20 teams? Yeah, I wish the first week of the college basketball season was better. Talk about that a lot on Locked On College Basketball for those of you who also listen to that show that I host with my good friend Isaac Shade. The opening day only had 2 Power 6 opponents playing each other, USC and Kansas State and Oregon and Georgia. That's it. Every other Power 6 team that played on the opening day did not play another Power 6 team. We saw no ranked games except for USC, Kansas State. And even then, I don't think that Kansas State was actually ranked. So I would like to see a better opening week. Having said that, a longer feast week, college basketball continuing to capitalize on the Thanksgiving market, having all these MTEs, having these extraordinary competitions a few weeks into the season. It's fantastic. It's great. And no, I have never seen a field better than the Maui Invitational. Phil Knight, PK 80 was great. Don't get me wrong, but this field has 8 teams in it. 50% of them are top 10 teams. That's Purdue, Kansas, Marquette, and Tennessee. All 4 of those teams are top 10 ranked teams. 75% of the teams in this field are top 25 teams. UCLA, we'll see if they're ranked by the time this tournament rolls around. They may not be, but they are, for all intents and purposes, they are a top 25 team. Of course, Gonzaga being the other one there. 6 out of the 8 teams are top 25 teams. 4 out of the 8 are top 10 teams. The other team is Syracuse, who is not a top 25 team, but is a quality Power 6 team. And then, of course, Chaminade. Fantastic field going on in Maui this year. Cannot wait. We're going to talk a ton about it leading up to that tournament. Next question here comes from Christian via Gmail. Christian says, Andrew Nembhard is making the most out of his minutes. In 19.8 minutes, he's averaging 4.3 assists. This seems uber efficient. Is there a stats for assists per minute? This articulates making the most out of opportunities excellently and seems to not only be true for Andrew, but for other Zags as well. Yeah, per 36 or per 100 possessions are the stats that are most used to kind of indicate how impactful player is on a minute-by-minute basis. Per 36 is just like extrapolating your stats to a 36 minutes per game average. Andrew Nembhard is averaging 7.9 assists for the Indiana Pacers per 36 minutes. That is 14th in the league as of this recording right now. So the argument in the question that Nembhard is an incredibly effective assists per the minutes he's getting is true. Top 15 in the entire league in terms of number of assists per on a per 36 basis. He's playing behind Tyrese Halliburton. Bruce Brown has got a starting role for Indiana. I understand why he's coming off the bench, but he's one of the best backup point guards in the entire league, and the Pacers are thrilled that they have him for the next couple of years in Indiana. Next question comes from Jim on Facebook. Jim says, do you see a future where players like Drew Timme and Zach Edey are valued higher by the NBA, or a future where NCAA teams value stretch-type players over ones like Timme and Edey? Yeah, these things do tend to ebb and flow in like a generational kind of 15, 20-year period of time. However, bigs these days are being taught to be ball handlers. They're being taught to shoot threes. They know that if they grow to be 6'8", 6'9", 6'11", 7 feet, whatever, and they can handle the basketball, they can stretch the floor, shoot from deep, that their odds of getting into the league are much better. And they are. I mean, it's true. I understand why Chet Holmgren's learning how to do those things, why Victor Wembanyama is doing those things. Like, I get it. Having said that, I do think players like Chet and Victor in particular they're going to be so good, they already are so good, that teams are going to have to figure out ways to slow them down. And one of the best ways to do that is to get huge, beefy dudes on your roster who can push them around a little bit. That's why I think Zach Edey's going to have an NBA career. Because somebody's going to put him on the back of their bench and say, all right, we're playing Wembanyama today. Zach's going to get 20 minutes and he's going to foul him 6 times, but hopefully he's going to interrupt a whole bunch of his shots. I really do think that is like Shaquille O'Neal, his dominance in the NBA created basically roles for these huge dudes to just be backup centers who came into the game and tried to slow him down for 15 minutes. It's different because Wembanyama can just step out and, Zach Edey's going to have to defend him in space. And if he's not capable of doing that, it's going to be harder to play. But I do think that there is going to be roles for bigger guys like that. Doesn't help Drew Timme as much because he's not going to be carving out that kind of role. But I think the pendulum will swing eventually. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I think eventually it will come back in some capacity. Next question comes from Jeff via Gmail. Jeff says, any thoughts on the Gonzaga women's basketball overtime thriller against Washington State? Yes, they looked awesome in that game. Absolutely fantastic. This women's team is so much fun. I'm recording this right now as they are beating up on Toledo. Hopefully I have not jinxed anything and they secure their first home victory of the season here. This team's probably not going to be ranked because they lost to Washington State, a team who was ranked as 24th in the country at the time. But this team's going to be ranked at some point this year. I almost guarantee it. They're so good. They're so deep. They're so experienced. Bringing back the Trung twins, Eliza Hollingsworth, Vonnie Ejim, Britta Maxwell coming back, Callie Stokes off the bench. Like, this is a deep and talented team. Nia Ojukwu has looked solid in a reserve role for this team as a transfer from Utah. This is going to be a top 25 team. I think they're going to make some noise throughout the year. Final question of the show, another one from Jeff, asking about the postseason performances for Gonzaga's fall sports. Yeah, it has been an incredible run for Gonzaga's athletic department outside of just the basketball teams. The women's soccer team is going to play UC Irvine in the second round of the NCAA tournament. If they win that, they're going to go to the Sweet 16. Men's cross country is advancing to the national finals 4 years in a row. Gonzaga athletics are peaking right now. Are you paying attention, Big 12? Are you paying attention, Big East? This school is not just men's and women's basketball. They got a lot of great things going for them, and that is going to continue whether Gonzaga stays in the WCC or not. All right, that's going to wrap us up for today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Don't forget to smash the like button. Let me know you were here in the comments. Also, join us on Discord where we're talking Gonzaga basketball 24/7. Click the link in the show notes. You will be asked to join right there. It is completely free, fantastic resource for all Gonzaga fans out there. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, as always, go Zags.